They called them the 7 alchemical codes of power, hidden in plain sight, encrypted in temples, dreams, and geometry, used by the ancient ones to manifest everything from silence. If you've ever felt that reality doesn't respond to action, but to something deeper, this is the knowledge they never wanted you to remember. These aren't just teachings, they're technologies of consciousness, and they were hidden from you, not by accident, but design. What if the universe wasn't a place, but a mind? Not a mind like yours, divided between thoughts and distractions, but a vast, still, infinite field, pulsing with silent awareness. What if everything you see, touch, call real, was first dreamed somewhere so deep, so formless, it left no trace but vibration? Pause here. Let go of the logic. Something deeper is whispering. There's a reason you've always felt that certain thoughts shape your days, that certain intentions seem to pull reality toward them like magnets, but no one told you why. They said it was luck. They said it was positive thinking. They said it was coincidence. They lied. The truth is more ancient than language. It echoes through lost scrolls, silent pyramids, forgotten stones. The mystics knew it. The sages hinted at it. And the gods, they lived by it. Reality is not outside you. Reality is shaped by you, but not the you think you are. Not the personality, not the name, not the history, but the inner current that thinks through you, the one who watches your thoughts arise like mist and fall like rain. This is the first code, not a rule, not a law, but a primordial principle encoded into the structure of existence. Everything that exists first in thought, and every thought vibrates. Imagine a blank canvas that only reveals its painting when you look at it with intention. Imagine a mirror that doesn't reflect your image, but your frequency. That is the universe. And every day you unknowingly speak its language. Not with words, but with focus. Where your attention goes, energy flows. Where your belief rests, form takes shape. Where your fear hides, distortion breeds. This is the hidden architecture behind manifestation. Not an effort, but a resonance. Not a trick, but a tone. You are not here to force the world into your shape. You are here to remember the shape your vibration already has, and realize the world responds to that. Look deeper. The ancient scrolls spoke of the logos, the word, not as language, but as creative thought. Sound made frequency, silence made form. In the beginning was the word, they said, but the word was never spoken. It was held, focused, whispered in silence, until it moved energy across the veil. Modern minds confuse knowledge with power, but true power comes before knowledge. It is the quiet certainty that arises when your frequency and your vision align, not just as desire, but as reality already forming. This is the original magic. Before the altars, before the chants, before the books. To know that what you hold in mind, you begin to hold in hand. To understand that the invisible isn't less real, only less disturbed. To realize that thought is the blueprint of matter, and belief is the architect's ink. But here's what no one tells you. You're always creating, even when you don't mean to, even when you're afraid, even when you say, I can't, because the field responds not to your words, but to the vibration behind them. And that's where the distortion begins. Most people live in conflict, wanting abundance but vibrating scarcity, wishing for love but fearing intimacy, calling for clarity but holding confusion in their field like a blanket. So the field mirrors not the wish, but the frequency. And then they call that fate. No, that is just unconscious creation. So the real question is not what do I want? The real question is, what am I vibrating? If reality is mental, not psychological, but vibrationally mental, then your primary tool is not action. It is awareness. You do not command reality through force. You harmonize with it through frequency. And frequency is altered by focus, purity, stillness. It's not about thinking more. It's about thinking from the field you wish to enter, from the version of you who already lives it, from the silence beneath the noise. And here lies the secret they never told you. What you think is not just yours. It ripples into a field shared by all. Your dominant vibration becomes a note in the collective song. That's why inner alchemy isn't personal, it's planetary. You are not changing your life. You are tuning a universe. Pause here, breathe. What thought have you been repeating so often it became part of your energy? What silent belief have you nurtured in the dark, thinking no one could hear, but the universe has heard it all along? Here is your mirror. The field is not punishing. It is precise. It cannot lie. It simply responds. So if you want to change your reality, don't beg, don't shout, don't force. Change your tone, and if your tone is aligned with presence, clarity, love, the world cannot help but respond in kind, not out of magic, out of symmetry. And this is the first key, the first breath, the code behind every code. Not something to apply, but something to become. You are not a body trying to shift reality. You are consciousness, shaping reality from the inside out. Not by pushing, but by remembering. Now that you've remembered the first code, can you feel it vibrating in your thoughts? Can you sense how even now the field around you is listening, waiting, not for action, but for alignment? Let this awareness ripple through you, because what comes next is not outside you. It's your own reflection, waiting to be read. If the 7 alchemical codes hidden by the ancients are starting to awaken something in you, like this video and subscribe now. This is more than information, and it's remembrance. They said the world was outside you, but the ancients taught it's a mirror that only reflects what you dare to hold. The second code was never written. It was carved in silence, etched into the eyes of those who saw through the illusion. Not the illusion of the world, but the illusion of separation. The ancient ones called it the mirror law, but not because it reflects your face, because it reflects your frequency. And most live their whole lives trying to change the reflection, instead of adjusting the light within. Have you noticed? You shift cities, you change people, you burn bridges and build new ones, but the patterns return. The lessons repeat, the feeling somehow follows. That's not coincidence, that's correspondence, but we won't name it yet. Instead, let's walk the symbol. Imagine you're standing before a mirror, but instead of showing your image, it shows your essence. Not your clothes, not your past, but your tone, your inner field, your unspoken truths. Now imagine you get angry at that mirror. You scream, you demand that it show joy, you demand love, you demand clarity, but the mirror doesn't argue. It just keeps reflecting exactly what is. This is what reality does. It doesn't punish, it reflects, and that reflection is your curriculum. The world isn't showing you what's wrong with it. It's showing you where you're still split. The heartbreak, a mirror of your abandonment, the chaos, a mirror of your inner noise, the rejection, a mirror of your self-doubt, the magic, a mirror of your openness, the synchronicity, a mirror of your trust. Every experience, every person, every delay is a message sent from you to you via the sacred mirror. But here's where the initiates understood what others could not. You're not stuck in the reflection. You are the source, which means you can change it, not by effort, not by strategy, but by resonance. If your inner field shifts, the outer projection follows. It has to. It's law, not belief, but there's a trap. Because the ego loves to manipulate the mirror. I'll pretend I'm fine so that life gives me good things. I'll force a high vibration to avoid pain. I'll fix myself so that others love me. But the mirror doesn't respond to performance. It responds to presence, to honesty, to depth. You can't fake alignment. The mirror doesn't reflect your mask, only your tone. So the work is not to look better. The work is to become clearer, not to decorate the room, but to clean the glass. And once the mirror is clean, you stop seeing others as enemies. You stop blaming circumstances. You start receiving feedback. This is where the alchemy begins. When you take the world personally, it wounds you. But when you take the world symbolically, it teaches you. Suddenly, your partner becomes a glyph, your illness, a signal, your delay, an oracle, your fear, a door. And once you stop resisting what shows up, you can start retuning what creates it. Because the mirror does not originate, it responds. And the moment you embody the frequency of what you once chased, the chase ends. The reflection shifts, the game resets. The ancient ones didn't fight their reality. They studied it, they listened, they read the mirror until it opened into a portal, and then they stepped through, not into a new world, but into a new self, who no longer needed the old reflection. And so, this is the code. What you meet out there is what you carry in here. But once you shift the tone of your inner song, the mirror becomes a window, and the reflection becomes a revelation. So ask yourself, what has life been reflecting back at you, again and again? Not to shame you, but to show you. Not to stop you, but to awaken you. Look again, not with judgment, but with symbolism. Because when you learn to read the mirror, you learn to rewrite your fate. And once that begins, the third code starts whispering through your field. It's not stillness, it's not silence, it's the pulse, and it's been humming beneath everything you call solid. Each code shifts the current. Stay present. The next ones will bend how you perceive reality itself. They taught you to trust what's still, but the ancients knew nothing is still, not even your silence. You may think the world is made of objects, stone, bone, sky, flesh, but It isn't. It's made of vibration. Every form is a rhythm that's slowed down. Every object is a song temporarily frozen in space. And every moment you think you're still, you're dancing. The ancients understood this not as metaphor, but as fact. To them, silence was music you hadn't yet tuned into. Stillness was only surface tension. And what we call solid was simply vibration, dense enough to pretend it had stopped. But nothing stops. Not the planets, not the blood, not the breath, not the thought, not the soul. The field hums, the codes pulse, and what you attract is what you're in tune with. Here is the forgotten secret of manifestation. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are resonant with. That's why you can wish, beg, cry, script, visualize. But if your vibration doesn't match the reality you're asking for, it echoes back, silent. The universe is not listening to your voice, it's listening to your frequency. And frequency cannot be faked. There is no pretend joy that summons abundance. There is no strategic stillness that calls peace. There is only alignment. And alignment doesn't come from performance, it comes from attunement. You must become the vibration of the life you desire, not once but now, not someday but in your breath. This is why the initiates didn't seek power, they tuned to it. They became clear instruments, and the song of the universe played through them. So here is your question. What frequency are you unconsciously vibrating? What pulse have you forgotten is still echoing in your field from decades ago? That fear you absorbed at 5 years old, that scarcity loop that lives in your breath, that grief no one helped you name. All of it still vibrates, and the field still hears it. But here's the revelation. What vibrates can be retuned. What hums can be harmonized. What echoes can be rewritten. You are not stuck with your signal. You are its conductor, but you must stop identifying with the dissonance. You must become still enough to hear what's really humming beneath your distraction. Because vibration is not just external, it is internal. The stomach tightens, the jaw clenches, the breath shortens, the thought repeats, the mood loops. These are not random symptoms, they are tone, and your tone creates your timeline. So if you want to change your outer experience, don't chase outcomes. Adjust the resonance, and that begins with listening. Can you hear the tone beneath your words? The vibration behind your I'm fine? The pulse inside your silence? The ancients could. That's why they healed with sound, why they whispered codes into water, why they used mantras not as affirmations, but as vibrational keys. Every word you speak, every thought you allow, every emotion you repeat is a tuning fork. So the question isn't just what are you vibrating, it's what field are you calling into form? Just by being who you are, because you can only receive what you've already become. And the moment you shift your tone, the field rearranges, not later, instantly, because vibration is the language of creation, and every single thing you've ever manifested came not because you deserved it, but because you resonated with it. That's not punishment, that's precision. So here's your initiation. Stop trying to fix the outside. Start listening to the inside. Then ask, what tone do I want my life to sing with? Because once you change your inner hum, you don't have to manifest anything. It will find you, because it recognizes itself. And that's when the field starts dancing back. They told you to chase the light, but the ancient ones knew. True, power comes from holding both suns, the one that burns and the one that heals. We are trained to seek the positive, to push away shadow, to crave happiness, light, clarity, safety. And we are told that sadness, anger, confusion, darkness are failures. But the ancients never divided life like this. To them, light and shadow were not enemies, they were twins, not opposites. Complements, they called them the two suns, not because they both shine, but because they both teach. One sun warms, the other burns. One reveals, the other dissolves. One grows life, the other ends illusion. And both are sacred. You see, the modern mind thinks, if I feel pain, something's wrong. But the ancient mind understood, if I feel pain, something is surfacing. Pain is not punishment. It's pressure and from within, begging you to look where you've refused to see. It is the darker sun, and it comes to melt what no longer serves. But here's the riddle of the two suns. The more you resist one, the more you distort both. Try to cling to light, and you become blind to nuance. Try to avoid shadow, and it governs you from beneath. The initiate doesn't chase light. The initiate becomes transparent, not because they've removed the dark, but because they've integrated it. The fourth code teaches this. Polarity is not a flaw of the universe. It's a function, a training, ground for the soul to remember balance. For without shadow, how would you perceive radiance? Without cold, how would warmth mean anything? Without descent, How would you know you had risen? The code of the two suns invites you to stop labeling, to stop dividing life into good and bad, to stop calling certain emotions sacred and others shameful. All of it is frequency. All of it is code. Even rage, when held with consciousness, becomes fuel. Even grief, when honored, becomes water. Even fear, when listened to, becomes compass. And joy, true joy, doesn't come from avoiding the dark. It comes from surviving it with grace. So ask yourself now, which sun have you ignored? Which part of your experience have you rejected? Which half of your own being have you tried to erase? Because polarity isn't something to fix, it's something to witness. And the moment you do, you realize there is no battle between light and dark, only contrast, only rhythm, only teaching. And here's the real secret. You don't heal by becoming light, you heal by becoming whole. And whole means both, the sun that lifts you and the sun that burns away your falsehood. The fire you worship and the fire that breaks you open. You are not meant to choose. You are meant to remember that they are one, and you are the sky that holds them. And just like that, your inner conflict becomes a temple, and duality becomes a dance, and your emotions and even the raw wild ones have become guides. Because when you can sit with all of them, they stop overpowering you, and they begin revealing something deeper. You are not the flame. You are the source of the fire. And when that truth lands, you no longer fight the night. You bless it because it holds your other sun. They told you time was linear, but the ancient ones surfed it like a rhythm, because what rises also returns. At first you think it's chaos. One day you're aligned, the next you're scattered. One season overflows, the next everything dries up. You wonder, what am I doing wrong? But it's not you, it's the wave. The universe doesn't move in straight lines. It breathes, it expands, contracts, it pulses, recedes. It follows an ancient rhythm encoded into the very nature of existence. What we call ups and downs aren't punishments, they're patterns. And the ancient ones knew this. They didn't try to escape the wave, they rode it. Because when you understand rhythm, you stop resisting cycles. You stop panicking when you descend. You stop clinging when you rise. You start asking, what is this wave trying to teach me now? See, most people are terrified of the drop, the heartbreak, the silence, the no, the void. But the drop is never the end. It's just the inhale before the next exhale. The energy that leaves always returns, but not to those who chase, only to those who wait, awake, because the wave doesn't answer your urgency. It answers your rhythm. And here's where the fifth code reveals its real magic. When you move with rhythm, you become timeless. You stop aging from stress. You stop forcing what isn't ready. You stop drowning in the undertow of resistance. Instead, you listen. You sense the rising before it begins. You feel the pull before the return. You begin to see seasons, not setbacks, lessons, not losses, initiations, not interruptions, like the moon, like the tide, like the inhale and exhale of your own being. You begin to trust the arc, because the drop is not failure, it's preparation. The silence is not punishment, it's tuning. And the rhythm is not here to confuse you, it's here to remind you. You are not separate from time, you are its instrument. So now ask yourself, where have you been trying to hold the wave still? Where have you resisted the fall, clung to the high, feared the pause? Because mastery doesn't come from control, it comes from surrendering with awareness, to flow when it's time to move, to rest when it's time to be still, to rise when the current calls, and to let go when it recedes. That's what the ancient ones knew. That's why they never forced fruit out of season. That's why they waited for alignment instead of chasing opportunity. That's why they trusted the rhythm of things. And this is your invitation. Stop fearing the quiet. It is sacred. Stop labeling the pause. It is potent. Stop mourning the descent. It is coded. Because the wave you ride is not random. It is wise, and once you feel its beat, you no longer crash. You surf, not over the water, but over time, and the tide will carry you, if you become light enough to float. If this is resonating at a level beyond words, subscribe now. You are not just watching, you're remembering who you were before the forgetting. They told you you were at the mercy of the world, but the ancient ones whispered you are not the effect, you are the cause forgotten. Most of us are taught to react to circumstances, to what others say, to the past, to the market, to our mood. We wait for life to shift so we can finally respond with peace. But this is backwards. The ancient ones knew what we forgot. Nothing begins out there. Everything starts within. Before the wave, there is the stir. Before the outcome, there is the impulse. Before the moment unfolds, there is you. Not you, the personality, but you, the field. You, the origin point. You, the motion that precedes movement. They called this the first motion, the subtle decision beneath the conscious thought, the silent yes beneath the visible action, not reaction, creation. Most people live their entire lives as reactions in disguise, defensive choices, inherited beliefs, survival loops. They think they're choosing, but they're only echoing. You ask, why does this keep happening to me? But the real question is, what have I been echoing that keeps summoning this? Because you're not cursed, you're patterned. And the field does not judge your pattern, it mirrors it. The sixth code is the remembrance that you are not here to be shaped by life. You are here to shape it, but only when you remember the power of your origin point. When you choose from fear, you seed a timeline of reaction. When you choose from awareness, you awaken the path of causality. You become the tremor that begins the sequence. It's not about being in control, it's about being in coherence. Because the first motion doesn't shout, it whispers. It asks, are you acting from essence or from echo? From presence or from pain? From truth or from protection? The field can tell, reality can feel it, and what follows your first motion obeys it. So here's the mystery embedded in this code. Every time you choose in full alignment, you generate not just a new outcome, but a new world. And that world doesn't wait 10 years, it begins now, right here. Because when the origin is pure, the ripple is clear. This is what the ancient ones mastered. They didn't react to storms, they seeded stillness. They didn't beg for signs, they became signals. They didn't wait to feel ready, they aligned and moved. And that movement was never random. It was rooted in essence, which is why their steps shape civilizations, and yours can too, but only if you stop trying to control the end and start taking responsibility for the beginning. So ask yourself, what is my first motion made of? Is it clarity or confusion? Resentment or remembrance? Scarcity or signal? Because when your first motion changes, your life doesn't just shift. It echoes differently, and everything downstream obeys it. You are not here to wait. You are here to initiate. And when you do, the field moves. Not because you pushed, but because you pulsed, and the entire system of reality remembers who's in charge. They told you creation was force, but the ancient ones knew true power comes not from pushing, but from the harmony of opposites within. In every myth, there is a birth, a moment where form arises from formlessness, a spark from silence, a world from the void. But what no one tells you is this: nothing is created from one. Everything is born from two, becoming one. This is the final code, the one they kept hidden in temples, woven into symbols and spoken only in whispers between those who could see. The ancient ones called it the sacred union, not of man and woman, but of principles, of forces, of poles, of the masculine and the feminine, of stillness and movement, of receptivity and action, of space and spark. Because real creation doesn't erupt, it gestates. It begins with inner alignment, not outer effort. You see, the modern world glorifies doing, productivity, hustle, acceleration. But the ancients revered stillness just as much. They knew that without receptivity, no seed can grow, no temple can rise, no vision can anchor. This is the secret, encoded in every myth of divine birth. The power was never in the act alone. It was in the harmony of forces that made the act sacred. The final code whispers, you are not meant to choose between motion and stillness, between fire and water, between dreaming and doing. You are meant to marry them. Because only when the poles are balanced, when the left and right harmonize, when will and intuition stop competing, can true power emerge. And that power is creative, not in the artistic sense, but in the existential one. It is the kind of power that doesn't replicate, it generates. It doesn't copy, it conceives. It brings into form what has never existed before, because it comes from a union within you that had never occurred before. And so we ask, where within you is the war still active? Where are you pushing when you should be softening? Where are you yielding when you should be declaring? Because harmony is not passivity. It is intelligence. It is a frequency where the full spectrum of you becomes available and the channel opens. The ancient ones were not more divine than you. They were simply more integrated. They knew the secret most modern seekers forget. You cannot manifest from fragments, only from fullness. You can chant and visualize all you want, but if your energy is torn in two directions, the field listens to the incoherence, not the intention. So the initiate's path is not about doing more. It's about aligning more deeply, balancing the inner sun and moon, the inner flame and chalice, the inner architect and oracle. And from that sacred inner marriage, a new world is born, not with effort, but with inevitability. Because when your poles unite, creation is not forced, it is received. This is the final doorway, not to control, but to conceive. not to force, but to allow what is ready through. And so now, the seventh code lands, not as instruction, but as embodiment. You are not just a vessel of force, you are a field of union. And the life you're here to create is the one that only this inner union can summon. So ask, what does my soul long to birth? And what part of me must I marry to bring it through? Because nothing is born alone, not even you. What if everything you just heard was not random? What if each of these codes was a fragment of something ancient hidden in plain sight? You felt it. You didn't just hear words. You recognized something, not with your mind, but with something older, a sense of remembrance, echoes behind the metaphors, threads you couldn't name, but couldn't ignore, because the truth was never absent, only veiled. Now look back. The code of the invisible origin, the code of the inverted mirror, the code of the silent pulse, the code of the two suns, the code of the wise wave, the code of the first motion, the code of the creative union. You may have felt like you were collecting new tools, but what you were really doing was walking, an initiatory path walked by seekers for over 5,000 years, and now the veil lifts. These are not just codes, they are the 7 ancient principles, the hidden laws encoded in Hermeticism, the pillars of the emerald tablets, the eternal architecture of reality itself, known by names like mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, gender, but names don't matter. What matters is resonance, and now you know them, not because you memorized them, but because you felt them, in your breath, in your memory, in your field, because that's the only way real knowledge survives, by becoming embodied truth. The ancient ones didn't create these laws, they recognized them, they bowed to them, they aligned with them, and that's what made them powerful. So now the question is not, how do I use these codes? But how will I live them? Because the moment you live them, they stop being ideas, they become frequencies, and the field begins to shift. You're no longer a seeker of power. You are a carrier of it. You're no longer asking where truth lives. You're realizing it was living in you, and this is why it was hidden, because only the one ready to see will ever recognize the pattern. And you have remembered what was never forgotten. You have heard what cannot be taught. You have entered a vibrational current that no algorithm can decode because it was written in your soul before you were born. And so we say this, you are not a student of the Hermetic code. You are its living continuation. Now, only one code remains, the one that can't be named. What part of your inner polarity is asking to be integrated? Comment below. Your insight is a frequency in this field. There is one code they never wrote. One that could not be hidden in books or carved into tablets, because it was you. They could conceal the symbols, encrypt the texts, bury the temples, but the most powerful truth was never stored outside. It was always encoded within you. Every perception, every attraction, every loop, every gift was pointing to one revelation. You were not meant to learn the 7 codes. You were meant to remember that you are one of them. You are the mirror. You are the pulse. You are the rhythm. You are the origin. You are the union. You are the law made flesh. You are the field dreaming itself awake. That's why no one could explain this to you, because it wasn't made to be explained. It was made to be activated, and now it has been. Something has shifted, subtly, irreversibly. Your thoughts sound different now. Your choices feel more deliberate. Your reality begins to reflect coherence where there was confusion. Why? Because you're no longer running the program. You've begun to write it. You no longer believe the story of separation. You feel the symmetry. You no longer seek the temple. You are the gate, and the path from here is not forward. It is inward, deeper, wider, freer. So this is where we leave you, not with an ending, but with a vibration, a frequency designed not to be understood, but to be tuned to. The frequency of ancient remembrance, of silent authority, of the true creator awakening. Because when the student disappears, the initiate begins. And if you're still here, still breathing in this field, still sensing this language beyond language, you are one of them, one of us, the carriers of the code, the ones who do not teach but transmit, not because they want to be followed, but because they remembered how to stand still in truth. You've now walked through the 7 alchemical codes of power, not as ideas but as initiations, each one a doorway, each one a mirror, each one a part of the Hermetic whole. Now is the time to integrate, to apply without effort, to vibrate without fear, to move as if the universe is already aligned, because it is, with you, because you remembered, and this remembrance changes everything. Stay until the end. This message was alchemical, not just to be heard, but to be embodied. You are not just a seeker, you are a resonant field awakening. Subscribe and align with the Emerald Code, where ancient wisdom, alchemy, and hidden laws converge. Welcome home.